Hi, I'm Debbie from Off Topic. Things I didn't plan to learn. Today I'm going to talk about a homeless book that I was writing in Costa Rica. What had happened was I moved to Costa Rica from Colorado after I retired because I couldn't afford to live in the United States. And so I was living there happily and I was working with the homeless. I volunteered with them. I had a breakfast every Saturday with a group of people that made a not very nice breakfast for them. We had tables with tablecloths on them and chairs, and we had this in a park every week. And all the homeless would come, and we treated them very nicely. They got as much food as they wanted, and it was a wonderful gathering every week. We got to know them that way. And also, I had a little program where I made jewelry with the homeless because I was trying to get them to make products that we could sell so that I could get enough money to buy the things that they needed. Because they were always coming to me for clothing articles, belts and shoes and jeans and shirts and whatever they needed. And so I was using my tutoring money for that because I was an English tutor, but I wasn't having enough because there were 40 guys and 40 men and women, so I didn't have enough money to get everything that they needed. So with that money, it really helped a lot. So anyway, I was at this point I still didn't know that much Spanish. I was a beginner in Spanish class still. I was working toward getting into the intermediate class, but my Spanish wasn't that great still. But I thought, I'd really like the homeless to become part of the community because the people in the community would treat them like they were invisible. That's one of my other videos about being invisible with the homeless. And so I thought, how about if we write a book and we have a chapter for each of the people in the story with pictures of them, and people can see what nice persons they are. So we did. We had each of the people in our volunteer group take one or two of the homeless and interview them. And so we did this during one of the Saturday breakfasts. So they sat down together and they had a list of questions like, where are you from? How long have you been in Grecia? Tell us about your family. Tell us what it was like when you were little. If you are addicted to something, when did that happen? How did it happen? Who introduced you to it? How do you like your life here in Grecia? What are some of the problems that you encounter? And so they did all the questions. And a lot of the people did not know how to read or write. And of course, the volunteers all did. So they wrote everything down. And they were very kind to them and very encouraging. And so that was a great experience for all of them. And then I had taken a lot of pictures already of a lot of the homeless, and so had the people in our group. And so I had plenty of pictures to put in the book. And I went around and I listened to all the different interviews going on, and I took more pictures. And the homeless were just glowing because they were so excited that they got to be the star of the show. They got to tell their stories. So it was pretty neat. And then one guy told me, he was an older guy. He was probably the oldest one in the group, probably in his 70s. And he said, this is so great. He goes, my family doesn't even care about me. They don't even know anything about me, and they're not even around. And I get to tell you guys my whole life story. And he was just thrilled. And so it was a really good experience. So I got everything all typed up in Spanish, all translated, and it was really something. Then I had all the guys, all the men and women had to sign a form saying that they allowed this story to be published. And that was an ordeal for me to try to locate everybody to get their signature. And then a lot of them didn't know how to write, so they put an X on there. But it was a lot of fun. And then I got it all together. And then I started to find out the truth, that they had not really told their real stories. They had really made everything up. And so little by little, I started hearing this. One homeless person would tell me that another person had said that they had told this other story that wasn't true, and another one told me another one, and so on. And so it just kept mounting. And I thought, well, I can't really publish a book that is all a bunch of lies, a fictional book telling about them. So the book never actually happened, but I made a chapter for each of the people. I put them in plastic sheets with pictures and a Bible verse for each of them, and a copy of their transcript in Spanish. And I gave each of them that at one of the breakfasts, and a person read it to them. We sat with each other and they read it. And one of the ladies, who was also an older lady, she was probably in her 60s, and her name was Margarita, and she said, "Is that what I look like?" Because she hadn't even seen a picture of herself. She didn't even know. She didn't have a mirror. She had no idea that that's what she looked like. And I was just like, wow, I can't believe it. And a lot of the people were crying when their stories were read to them, and it was a very touching experience for everybody. And the people in our group, the volunteers in our group, they were crying too. And the people that had helped to translate, my English students were some of them, they also were very touched by the stories, even though the stories turned out not to be true. But I'm going to tell you one of the fake stories that somebody told and the real story, so that you can get an idea of what types of things happened. Okay, the fake story was that this guy came from South America, and his family was super rich. They had a giant house with motorcycles and cars, and they had a drug laboratory underground. And nobody was allowed to go into that laboratory except the people that worked there. And so they made all these drugs, and that's how they got all their money. And so then he talked about coming on a boat with his brother with these drugs and all this stuff, and I thought it was true. Well, it turned out later on I actually met his brother, and I found out that that was a total lie, that they had grown up very poor in Central America. They had lived on a farm, they didn't have shoes, they barely got to go to school, and they just were dirt poor. They just lived with their grandfather, and they didn't really even see their parents. So later on, I confronted the guy and said, you know, why did you tell that story about being so rich and all that stuff? And then he looked really, really sad and sheepish, and then he said I was ashamed. He said I had vergüenza. I was ashamed. And so I thought, wow, yeah, and I'm sure that the other people that had the made up stories, it was the same thing for them as well. So something that I didn't plan to learn was how deeply these homeless people were affected by their early lives and by things that had happened to them that were no fault of their own. that probably led them to be living a life on the street and a life with addictions. This probably contributed very greatly to them living this lifestyle. So it was something very, very important to find out. If you have enjoyed this video, please take a look at the video about the homeless being invisible, and please subscribe to my channel and give this video a like. And thank you so much for coming. Goodbye.